And welcome to the Aaron Katsman Show. I'm your host, Aaron Katsman. We speak about your life, your money, and your investments. And as always, we're coming to you from the spiritual and soon-to-be financial capital of the world, Jerusalem, Israel. If you like this content, and why wouldn't you? Please hit the like button below. And if you've not yet done so, please subscribe to both the YouTube channel and the podcast. So we're continuing on our series about entrepreneurship. And today, it's my pleasure to bring on somebody who's going to give us a completely different perspective, because he is both an entrepreneur and a coach for entrepreneurs. It's my pleasure to introduce and bring on the show Yedidya Brauner, who started working in high tech and about two and a half years ago opened up his own coaching practice where he coaches CEOs, entrepreneurs, high net worth individuals. He's got a fascinating story and he's got a really unique perspective into the world of entrepreneurship. So it's my pleasure to welcome Yedidya to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate that. So let's go right into let's jump right in, right? Tell us a little bit about your story, right? How did you get into coaching and how do you define coaching? Because I think it's going to be a little different than other people define coaching.
I love that question. So I've been coaching my entire life. I just didn't know it was called coaching. So anywhere I was, when I was in yeshiva, when I was in the army, just a little plug in there. One of my claims to fame is I was in the army. I was an NCO rabbi of a small base by Netanya on the beach. And I had the privilege of teaching Wonder Woman some Torah classes. So Gal Gadot attended my classes.
Wow, that's cool. You should put that on your resume.
That's right. So I was coaching everywhere I was. And then when I joined high tech, I was in high tech for over 10 years. I started out as a QA engineer and then grew into the position of team leader, QA team leader, then product and project manager. At my peak, I was managing 5 teams around the globe simultaneously, different projects, software, firmware, and hardware. We created some phenomenal stuff. And then I transitioned, actually before coaching, I joined the Biblical Museum of Natural History. And I started out as CMO and head of business development. And shortly after that, they asked me to become the main tour guide as well. And I had the privilege of personally guiding over 15,000 people from more than 40 countries around the world in just 14 months till COVID hit. Once COVID hit, so museums were one of the first types of businesses to have to shut their doors. And when that happened, I had to let go of most of their staff. That included myself. And I had to reinvent myself. And I started my journey into coaching. I just didn't know it was called coaching until I stumbled upon it by working with other digital entrepreneurs in various countries. And they told me I was helping them build their businesses online. And the feedback I got from them was that the majority of the value that they were getting from me was not really in the practical advice of how to build a website and stuff like that, but it was more in the mindset of what it means to be an entrepreneur and how to persevere and how to build resilience and so on. And that was kind of like a eureka aha moment for me. That was a true insight when I realized what I'm bringing forth to the world. And I started to focus on that. And they told me, so you're basically a coach. And I didn't even know what a coach meant. I knew coach from sports, but I didn't know what it meant in this realm. And I started to explore this, investigate. And long story short, I became a student of a couple of the best coaches in the world today, Steve Chandler and Rich Litvin. I still coach by Rich. And I follow their approach to coaching, which is unique. It is different than most coaches, both in how to build the practice and in the approach to coaching itself. And today, I focus primarily, but not exclusively, coaching serial entrepreneurs, CEOs, high-level leaders, and some people who want to transition from the life of being an employee to being self-employed, becoming an entrepreneur. I deal with that as well.
That's really, really interesting. And so you sort of are, I mean, you said that you learned under these people, right? But it seems like you also were self-taught, right? You sort of hit the ground running, right? You mentioned that you had clients right at the beginning.
So I had clients I was helping them doing other things. And then I transitioned more into the coaching that I'm doing today. And that takes time. I'm still building my practice, right? And I'm very proud of the fact that I build my practice based on referrals and invitation only. I use no marketing besides the posts that I put out on Facebook and LinkedIn, no ads whatsoever. So
You don't have a website, right?
no website.
Don't believe, right?
On an anecdote on that, I worked with one of the biggest tech marketers on the planet. He was a client of mine, and it drove him nuts that I don't have a website. He said, I want to refer people to you. Just give me a link. I said, I don't have a site. It's like, how don't you have, everyone has to have a site today, right? So my philosophy is that I don't need a site, because anyone who's going to come to me through a site is probably not going to be a good fit for me, because I build my practice through deep relationships, human touch. When everyone goes high tech, I go high touch. We're so much lacking that human element in relationships today. So I build it through long, deep conversations with people. I listen deeply. I create and hold space for them to open up. And that's how my business is built. So I'm not against having a website. It just won't serve me today. I may have one tomorrow, but at the moment I don't need it. In addition, sorry, my highest paying client to date came to me in part because I don't have a website. They told me when they reached out, the reason we want to work with you as opposed to other coaches is because we're not the type of people to hire a coach who has a website.
So psychology, I guess, plays the major part of what it is that you're doing. Is that right? Let's say I come to you, right? I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a CEO, right? I'm a founder, CEO of my own small business, right? What's the process? Like, how does it, obviously it's different for each person, what each person is trying to accomplish, but sort of, more on a general scale, like what do you do?
So in broad terms, of course, psychology is a huge part of what I do. However, there's a general distinction between psychology or therapy in general and coaching, because primarily therapy is focused on your past, healing and diving deep into whatever happened in your history. There's a place for that. Coaching, proper coaching, is primarily focused on your future, irrespective of your history. So you don't necessarily have to dive into your past in order to create your successful future. So there are some psychological elements that I bring into coaching. Yes, I work on a person's psyche and mindset and stuff like that, but it is not therapy. There's a place for remedial coaching too, but that's not the core of what I do.
Interesting. So let's take off your hat for a second. We'll get back to you as an entrepreneur, and right. Let's look at the perspective you have with entrepreneurs, right? Because this is a lot of prospective entrepreneurs, whether they're recent immigrants to Israel or they're thinking about opening a business, right? They just, what's it like to do business in Israel, in a foreign country, all those kinds of things. What kind of issues, like maybe 2 issues or so, do you see that come up for a lot of the entrepreneurs that you're working with?
So first of all, I work with clients from 6 of the 7 continents.
Wow.
The only one I'm lacking is a penguin from Antarctica.
And is it the same, right? I assume that there, obviously each continent has its own specificity or whatever, right? But I would think a lot of the issues are the same, right?
There are some commonalities, and it depends on what level of game they're playing, where they're at in life. So CEO type people struggle typically with certain things. Serial entrepreneurs are playing typically a bigger game. Let's say people post-exit, right? One of my clients, he came to me after an exit of a couple $100 million, where he was the sole owner of the company. So besides the tax authorities, he made all the money. That was a life-altering moment for him. And he was not an old person. He was a young man. He's got a lot more to do in his life. And it opened up a new space for him. He didn't know what to do at that point and how to bring forth his legacy. and his next big step.
Mhm.
So I helped him. It took a lot of deep inner work to bring him to that point. Took 6 months to get there, but we managed to craft this amazing new legacy for him. So each one has their own struggles. My coaching is extremely bespoke and tailored per client. No two clients get the same service from me.
Mhm. But two clients do have the same issues.
So there are commonalities.
What
When
would you say
reach
is
higher
common?
levels-
What would be the
So,
common?
for example, in leadership, a lot of leaders can feel alone. Sorry, they could feel lonely even though they're not alone. It's lonely at the top, right? And they don't have anyone to share their struggles with, even their successes. You know, when a client tells me they had a tax bill of $100,000 this year, they can't even tell that to some of their family members because most people don't. That's a quality problem, right? They can't share that with most people. Another thing is that they're surrounded by yes men. People tell them what they think they want to hear, and no one's actually holding up a mirror to them and telling them what they need to hear. That's a distinction between being nice and being kind. We're always taught to be nice to people, and that's important, and that's a high value. But sometimes there's a place to be kind. Being kind is if you see someone who has a stain on his shirt and they're going to a business meeting and you're their friend, you would point that out. You would alert them in advance, maybe you should change your shirt. That's being kind. Even though they may feel a little uncomfortable at that moment, you're actually helping them. So coaching leans towards being kind as opposed to always being nice.
That's an interesting distinction. I have found from the interviews that I've done so far, that for people who are really not serial, they're right. This is the first, they jumped into the water. They started whatever their business is. It might have been, vegan ice cream. It might have been a high-tech company, whatever, right? That the one thing that they had, the common denominators, they were actually speaking to people. It's the opposite, right? It's really interesting that you said it's lonely at the top. But at the beginning, I find that especially here in Israel, everybody's willing to talk. If you have an idea and you're thinking of opening a business, everybody wants to talk to you, right? Everybody wants to give you their 2 cents. Everybody's opinionated, but they're willing to open up their network a little bit. Do you find that also?
Yeah, the culture in Israel is very, very different. So yeah, I find that in Israel too. But typically, the people I work with, they don't really have that. That's a different type of problem. So from my experience, and that's kind of like a non-issue. Meaning, yeah, people would reach out to you for advice, and Jews are extremely opinionated, and Israeli Jews are maybe even one level
opinionated on steroids, let's say.
Yeah. So and they're not shy to share their opinions, just because they're right. They know the truth, so why not share that? So coming from that point, I hear what you're saying, but that's not really, once you reach the next level, that's a non-issue. It's when you graduate and you realize that there's more to life than just the grind, right? And you've made your success, you got the respect you needed, whatever it is. What's next?
Right.
What do you do then? Okay. And slowing down to speed up is one of the tools I give my clients. We're under this assumption and this notion that the results are a direct effect of your input, of your grind, when that's not always the case. And learning to create and hold space for yourself, doing that in your manner, learning how to slow down to speed up is an extremely powerful tool.
That's
just changing the cadence of your speech. I'm purposely speaking slower now. Some people will be annoyed by this, but what I'm actually doing is I'm giving you a different experience of life. I'm slowing time down for you. Your thoughts are settling. And when a person's thoughts are settled, they gain clarity from a place of calmness. And when you want to make what's considered a big decision in life, you would want to make that kind of decision from that place of calmness and clarity, as opposed to stress and anxiety. And
That,
helping these leaders reach that point is gold for them.
that's really, really interesting. I've started, recently I did a triathlon, a small triathlon, a mini triathlon. But if you go on like the groups and stuff for beginner triathletes, everybody complains about swimming. And the message that is given is slow down in order to speed up. Because people have the same thing, right? In the water, in deep water, they have anxiety. They have all kinds, they can't breathe. You slow down, right? And it's fascinating that it's the same principle. Very interesting. The other thing is we're on the same swimming thing. And I guess you see this with entrepreneurs. Like once you've hit your peak, right? You've made your exit, you had your IPO, right? They said with Mark Spitz back in the day, after he won all his gold medals, he didn't go back in the pool. He couldn't go back in the pool after, like, he reached the apex and that was it. Like, what do you do next? So I see you probably found that also, right? They have their great exit. They made, like your guy that you spoke to at the beginning, made hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay, now, right, I've done it all and I'm 30 years old. Now what do I do for the next 60 years?
Yeah, that's a real quality problem that most people will never encounter. And especially coming from a person who grew into that space. He didn't necessarily come from money, right? He maybe was living comfortably, but definitely not at that level. You need to expand yourself in order for the world to suit you, right? Because the world is coming at you and you're not ready. So it's entirely inner work. See, a lot of leaders come to me because they want to build resilience. And that's a big buzzword, especially in the tech world. And I ask them, what have you done about it so far? And they tell me. And I ask them, well, has that worked? And they say, no. And often the reason it didn't work is because they don't have the correct definition for resilience. Now, what I'm going to share with you now is not a dictionary definition, but it's a practical one. And that is, resilience is learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Because you're going to be engaging in situations, circumstances that are not entirely in your control. So the only question that remains is, how are you going to show up then? Because how you show up, your inner self, is 100% in your control, no matter what you think. It is always in your control. And if you can master being comfortable, being uncomfortable, you could do anything.
Out of your comfort zone, as they say.
So you expand your comfort zone by doing that. And we're approaching Rosh Hashanah, and that means we're approaching Yom Kippur. So as a firm Jew, I like to give this example to other Jews who could resonate with this idea. I remember in yeshiva many years ago, the rabbi gave a talk about how during Yom Kippur, especially younger people who are still new to fasting 25 hours, may have this hidden prayer in their heart. May God speed up time and get done with this fast, right? We all have that little prayer. He said, instead, your prayer should be, let this fast last forever, but give me the strength to withstand it. That is being resilient. So no matter what's happening outside you, if you have the inner strength to be comfortable in that situation, you could do anything.
Fascinating. Let's turn to your experience now as an entrepreneur, right? What issues, good or bad, like have you just had, right? You started a business a couple of years ago in the middle of Corona, basically, right? How has that whole experience been for you? I forget about your clients for a second. You as an entrepreneur.
There's 100% struggle, 100%. What I mean by that, building a business, there's no knowing how long it's going to take till you are, let's call it, prosperous. Okay? No one could promise you the promised land in X amount of time. That doesn't exist. The key is persistence. If you're in it for the long haul, you're going to make it, because there are going to be ebbs and flows no matter what, unexpected things that come up. When is the next client going to come? How much am I going to get from him? When is he going to pay me? All these unknowns, which are not entirely in your control. Being okay with that is my deep inner work. And I have a coach for that too, who always helps me and reminds me of what I'm capable of doing. So yeah, so I have my struggles still, right? I'm getting out of there. I'm on my way to being a Baruch Hashem, a more prosperous coach, but there are times when I don't know when the next client is going to come. So yeah, so that is basically my struggle as an entrepreneur, which is shared across the board at the beginning of any business.
Sure.
The key to that, the answer of how to play that game, how to maneuver it, is a distinction called sex and cash flow, which is in every business, they're going to be the shiny object, clients, projects, or whatever you want, the bigger ones, for instance. And you're going to have the cash flow projects, which are not necessarily as big or not your ideal client, for example. So learning to balance that out, and especially at the beginning of a business, which again could be 3 months or 3 years, you're going to be bringing in more of the cash flow. And every so often you could afford to take a bigger client, which is going to give you the push and ease to lay off of the cash flow a bit. But then you're going to have to pump it up again with cash flow until your business is really up and running, where the 80-20 rule balances the other way, where the majority of your efforts go towards the shiny clients, right? So that's how I play the game.
That's interesting. Same thing in my business. When I started, it was always a struggle between getting a big revenue pop from a client right at the get-go, or taking a lot less but building up a recurring revenue stream, and which serves for the long term. And it's always it's a real struggle. But
the bloodline of the company,
for the client, right? But yeah,
the bloodline of your business is the cash flow. You need that, even if you don't like it as much, but you're going to have to take on those projects too.
We're going to wrap up, but one more. Let's give a tip for a prospective entrepreneur, right? From both your drawing on your experience both as a coach and as an entrepreneur. You had one tip to give to somebody thinking of starting up a business, what would you give?
So about 9 months ago, a client asked me where my conviction in what I do comes from, because I'm a huge believer in what I do. And I shared with him that one of my core beliefs is the following. The Torah describes, at the beginning of the Torah, when it describes how Hashem created the world, it says that he created man in his image. But the question is, God doesn't have an image. Not only does he not have an image, we are forbidden to make any image of him. So how does the Torah use a term, a phrase, which is impractical for us to use? This is a really big question. There are many good answers to this, but the one I like is Rabbi Tzadok Okon of Lublin's answer, which I'm paraphrasing now. He says, if you were to think, what is an image? Image is your perception of something. That's the image you have in your mind of that thing. And if you strip down the relationship between man and God to its core, we're approaching the Yamim Noraim now, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, where we address Hashem as Avinu Malkinu, our Father and our King. But the first man, Adam Arishon, he didn't know what a father is. He didn't know what a king is. So how did he relate to God? What was the relationship between them? So the answer is creator, creation. That's at its core, that's our relationship with God. He's our creator, we're his creations. So when God comes and tells man, I created you in my image, meaning the same way you perceive me, that's what you are. You perceive me as a creator, I have the power to create worlds, so do you. And Reb Tzadok says, and this is verbatim, I'm translating, but he says these words, the same way there's a positive commandment, a mitzvah to believe in Hashem, to believe in God, so too there is a mitzvah, a commandment to believe in man. I believe in human beings, and especially entrepreneurs. See, many years ago, I heard this beautiful anecdote. I believe it was in the name of Rabbi Yisrael of Salant. He asked this question. He said, if a theoretical question, if a person is in the forest and he's now in the midst of his prayers at the core of Shmoneh Esrei, where you're not allowed to move around, you have to be fully focused on your prayers. And he notices in the corner of his eye something in the river nearby. Now, it could be that what he notices in that river is a log floating, in which case he must ignore the log and focus on his prayers. But it could be that it's a human being drowning, in which case he's he's obligated to stop his prayers and go save the person, right? The question he proposed was, is there a way to tell without moving from your spot if it's a log floating or a human being drowning? And he said, yes, there is a way. He said, if it's going with the current, it's a log. If it's going against the current, it's a human being.
Nice. Okay.
You got it.
Very good.
That is what it means to be an entrepreneur. So I help them believe in themselves even more, to stand up against all the currents that are pushing against them, help them persevere, help them become resistant, and be living a created life that happens for them no matter the circumstances.
Cool. Very inspiring and very informative. What can I tell you? How can people get in touch with you?
Facebook, LinkedIn, and email.
Okay, and I'll put that information up on the notes of the show as well. Yedidya, thanks so much for coming on. This was amazing.
Thank you so much for having me, and I wish you a happy, sweet new year.
You too. Happy New Year to you, and sweet as well. You've been tuning in to the Aaron Katsman Show, where we speak to you about your life, your money, and your investments. If you like this or any of the other content, please hit the like button below. Be sure to subscribe to both the YouTube channel and the podcast. And that's it. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll speak to you soon.